Hey, I think with my next character, I'm going to go green, and I'm going to play a Druid.
Well, with that, you're probably going to need a Druid staff.
Huh?
And let's not forget some brown Druid robes.
Damn it, Ted, stop fooling around!
Fine. Let's just talk about the Druid character class for 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons.
Welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds, by nerds, I'm Nerdarchy Steve, and as usual, I'm hanging out with this nerd.
Nerdarchy Ted.
Hey, you won't need one of your woodland friends to fetch you new D&D content if you hit that subscribe button.
And if you attune to that notification bell, it'll be like your own animal messenger, bringing you new Nerdarchy videos.
So we're going to be revisiting the Druid. A lot has changed since the first time we talked about the Druids. We're going to delve back into one of our basic videos. But you know, if you're a Druid, you're going to be wandering around the woodlands and the wilderness. And you know what's going to be really helpful when you do that?
Maps?
Maps. And speaking of maps, our sponsor for this video is Dungeon Fog. It is an awesome, great tool for creating maps for your D&D games, other RPG games. I mean, you can do cityscapes, you can do wilderness, you can do dungeons. I love it because the functionality of it is great, and it kind of feels like when I was a kid drawing on graph paper and building out my maps. I just love how it operates, and the system is just so intuitive.
We've been using Dungeon Fog for a while now. They've been a sponsor for a long time with the channel. We really appreciate that. We now begin incorporating some of these maps into our products as well as our articles over on nerdarchy.com.
Because there is several different subscription levels. You can sign up for a free account. You can get a paid subscription. You can get a commercial license if you make stuff for games like we do. We'll have a link down in the description so you can check that out.
All right, so back to Druid. We're looking at this, with fresh eyes. So how is it unpacking?
We're going to jump into the basics of the class. They get the 8-sider for a hit die, and then they get some proficiencies that are a little bit different than the other classes. They're going to get access to light and medium armor and shields with restriction. They cannot use metal whatsoever.
They can't use metal armor. It's a tradition that has gone throughout the ages with the Druid character class. It's a little bit weird, and they're the only one that have to have that restriction attached to it.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the way it's worded is it does have a restriction, but other places it says they just won't do it. And then you have every Nimrod on the internet going, it says they won't. It doesn't say they can't. I just wish Wizards of the Coast would have said nature will smite you if you're a Druid and you just die if you put on metal armor. Just so they were perfectly clear, if you're a Druid, you just can't wear metal armor. Doesn't work. But you can wear hide, so Dragon Scale works.
You can wear other materials that come from nature. So if you get a breastplate that's made from dragon or from belay or some other weird creature, totally can do it. They just can't wear it if it's metal.
Now, for weapon proficiencies for the Druid, unlike other classes where they just get, the categories, they get a list. They only get several weapons that they can use, most of which would be useful for you if you were, in nature and you needed to survive, as well as others have kind of like a symbolic meaning, like the scimitar because of the crescent and shaped like the moon.
Now, this I kind of find a little interesting because they're allowed to use metal weapons, but they're not allowed to use metal armor. So I've fought this for years. I don't fully understand, all right, if you want to just limit them to naturals, that's okay. Well, they can use staves and clubs, and that's it. But scimitar has always been there. It's their thing.
So then moving on to their other proficiencies, they all get the use of the herbalism kit, and then they get to select 2 proficiencies from a list. They get Arcana and Animal Handling.
They get Insight and Medicine.
Nature and Perception.
As well as Religion and Survival.
So they get a decent selection. They're going to get basically that tool proficiency and 2 skills, so not bad at all.
And they're going to get Intelligence and Wisdom as their good saves.
So Druids traditionally have been basically like the nature priests of D&D. But they also combine a lot of elements of the wizard, in my opinion, when it comes to their spellcasting and their versatility.
I would agree with that. Druids kind of do cross into that middle ground between wizard and cleric, and I think it's for that reason. I think a lot of people really do like them. They can do healing, they can do offensive magic, they have utility in some of their abilities as well, in just spellcasting alone, and that's before you begin to get into, the druidic powers.
Yeah, they're very, very elemental based. They're very, animal and plant based as far as their spellcasting. So you have like a lot of interesting options, which is a lot of fun. Speaking of spellcasting, it's a huge part of their kit. So right off the bat, they start with, they have spells that they can prepare. They have cantrips. Their cantrips, they actually get less than some of the other classes. They only get 2, as opposed to the 3 or the 4 of the sorcerer.
But, along with that, they do have, a caveat of other powers that they eventually get access to. So I think it does balance out. And, since we are looking at that kind of middle of the range, part healer, part offensive caster, it's not that much of a dip.
Now, like clerics, they prepare their spells, so they have access to the whole entire list. That makes them very versatile. And when you look at their list, they have a really good list anyway. It's going to be their wisdom modifier plus their level for the number of spells that they can prepare each day.
And their spell DC is going to be linked off of that wisdom modifier as well, along with their proficiency modifier.
Like some of the other casters, Druids are ritual casters, so any spell that they has the ritual tag that they have prepared for the day, if they spend the extra time, they can cast it without expending the spell slots.
Yeah, the extra 10 minutes goes a long way to not using that spell slot, and it really does make it useful. There is the caveat, like the cleric, of having to have it prepared for the day, unlike the wizard who can just read it right out of their book.
Yeah, I do love playing a druid and having speak with animals prepared, because that actually comes up quite often, and if you have the extra time, you can do it. It's fun for role playing. It's great for the exploration phase of the game. There's a lot of uses for it.
I don't know. I have to say that if you've ever sat out in nature and tried to convince an animal to stay in place for 10 minutes while you start reading mumbo jumbo, they usually get a little bit twitchy after minute 2 or 3.
The caveat is the spell actually lasts for a decent amount of time, so you ritually cast it, then you go find the animal.
Okay.
Or or you go and summon them or something, so you can have a conversation, and they kind of don't have a choice.
I was really expecting you to make a comment about me standing in nature, trying to talk to animals. But you know what? Sure, we'll let that part go on by.
You're a Boy Scout. You went all the way up to Eagle. You do you, man. You do you. So Druid, unlike most classes, actually get their subclass at 2nd level. You're going to get your subclass features, or circle features, I should say, at 2nd, 6th, 10th, and 14th. Everything else will be off of your core Druid class.
So that's only 4 subclass abilities spread out over all of those levels. So that is something to take into account, that the bulk of what you're getting class-wise is going to be linked to your primary class, and that your capstone or your keystone ability for your subclass is going to be at 14th level, which, if you're looking at multi-class, that gives you 6 other levels to play with, as well as having to wait far less than other classes that aren't going to get that no much higher.
Even though you only get 4 abilities, I will say a lot of the Druid abilities for the subclasses they came up with really modify and make each of them feel unique.
I will wholeheartedly agree with that. I think, each one definitely stands on their own 2 legs, in variety. So yeah, but as I said, it's only 4, so they really have to jam pack it in there.
So let's take a look at the subclasses now. There are 5 of them, 5 different flavors of Druid you get to taste. So first off, we have Circle of Dreams, and this one is the Druid you want to pick if you want to have a connection to the Feywild.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to play with. I actually got to play this in one of your one shots. That connection to the Feywild, that aspect of attaching yourself to dreams, gives you a lot of fun, a lot of flavor with it.
One of the other cool things about the Circle of Dreams is you're going to get a lot of extra healing. Not only are you going to get extra healing, but it's healing that can be done as a bonus action and at range. This is going to play a very important role later when we talk about wild shaping, because you can't cast spells while you wild shape, but you could use this ability. They also get quite a few utility abilities that are useful for exploration. Pillars of the game, why not? They're a druid, it's kind of like their thing. And also eventually they get to be very Fey-like in the sense that they can teleport all over the place, kind of like Nightcrawler.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. You can be able to teleport yourself or teleport others with what they're doing. Overall, they're hitting the combat exploration pillar pretty hard with this one, so I definitely dig it. So the next up, we have the Circle of the Land, and this is the one that actually gives the most options because you get to pick what type of terrain you're associated with.
This is the Druid's Druid, in my opinion, or the Spellcasting a Druid for sure. These Druids really double down on nature and elemental spells as well. One of the cool things is you're going to get expanded spell list, and these are spells that you just always have prepared, which is always really cool when you have a spellcaster, because just having more options. They're going to get an extra cantrip, so they have more cantrips than any of the other druids. They also get a natural recovery, so they can actually, during a short rest, get back some of their spell slots. So these are really probably the most powerful casters of all the druids.
It's very similar to the wizard in that regards.
Yeah, absolutely. Then the rest of their abilities pretty much make them better at interacting with nature as a whole, or even better at dealing with like Fae and elementals.
They get the ability to avoid non-magical, difficult terrain, hazards, that kind of stuff. So that they do excel at the exploration pillar. They're going to deal with the social pillar by bringing the ability to interact with Fae and beasts. And then, of course, with their enhanced spellcasting abilities, they hit the combat pillar as well.
So next up is probably the most popular circle, and that is the Circle of the Moon. And when we've been talking about pillars, this one's all about the combat, I think. Like, sure, there's some exploration, other things in there, but the Circle of the Moon Druid is really the tankiest version of the Druid. Actually one of the tankiest versions in the game. This Druid is really going to excel at wild shaping and shape shifting. If you want to turn into a beast and fight in beast form, they're the best because they get to expend spell slots in order to heal. They get improved wild shape, meaning they can turn into more powerful beasts. And not only that, they get primal strike, which means eventually your natural attacks are considered magic. So you're never going to have to worry about having magic weapons to hurt your foes.
Beyond that, they're going to be able to turn into elemental beings by using more doses of your wild shape, as well as eventually they're going to get the ability to cast alter self at will. So basically, they've got, whatever they want to look like, they can look like it.
Yeah, they completely master their form, and they are very popular. We've seen them pop up in our games time and time again.
Yeah, the Circle of the Moon Druid is the most popular. It's a lot of fun. It's enjoyable to play. So, dive into it.
Next up, we have Circle of the Shepherd. If you want to be a conjurer, summoner, pet type character for the Druid, this is the way to go. They're going to start off being able to speak Sylvan as well as communicate with beasts.
They eventually get the ability that the things that they conjure have more hit points to be able to go along with it and survive longer in battle.
Not only that, those same creatures that they summon, also their attacks are considered magical as well.
And their capstone ability within the subclass is the ability that if you get dropped to 0 hit points, you instantly summon creatures to be able to defend you. And they're going to tack on all these other abilities that are going to go with it. So it's pretty potent.
You get to summon 4 creatures. You're basically casting a 9th level spell at 14th level. I mean, you're unconscious and they just defend you, but they stay for an hour. You could get 4 giant elks, 4 polar bears, 4 cave bears, some pretty strong stuff, and they're just going to defend you and protect you. And chances are when you regain consciousness and someone gets you back on your feet, they're still going to be around for a while. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, pretty potent. Just, be careful if you're the party member coming over to heal.
We kind of even skipped over one of their abilities, and that is they get to summon these auras and set them up, and it's going to act as a buffing field with different options for your allies.
So next up on our subclasses, we've got the Circle of Spores.
All right, so this circle is all about life, death, and the cycles thereof, as well as kind of undeath, but they do undeath a little bit differently. Basically, their undeath is more like a viral infection that reanimates a host. So, in my opinion, it's not like necromancy per se. It's more of the body is being animated almost like it's an object more than being having an evil spirit shoved into it. But for all intents and purposes, when you do it, they act like zombies.
Indeed. So they're going to get circle spells that are going to be always prepared for them, and they definitely have a little bit of a necrotic flavor to them, including things like chill touch. So we definitely have a different aspect of Druid here. And they're also going to get an aura that does necrotic damage, in a radius around them. So this is definitely a different take on your Druid.
They get Symbiotic Entity, which basically enhances their halo of spores and necrotic damage you were talking about. They're going to do even more damage. They're going to get some temporary hit points, and they do it by sacking out their wild shape. One of the things you could actually do is wild shape, and then use another wild shape to have your spores on and kind of go Nova if you wanted to. They also get an ability called Fungal Infestation, which is a lot of fun, and that is the zombies we were talking about. They can just be, boom, there's a zombie, boom, there's a zombie, when things die around them. Very much makes me feel like the Infected Terrans from StarCraft back way when, I don't know, the new version might have it as well. It's been a long time since I played that game.
All right, so they get the ability called Spreading Spores, which are stationary areas that you can put out that are going to cause, extra necrotic damage. And then, the tops for them is they're going to get some resistances. They're not going to be able to be blinded or poisoned. Critical hits count as normal unless you're incapacitated. Just all kinds of series of I'm not going to worry about that anymore.
Yeah, basically you become almost like an undead, like a zombie yourself. It's really cool. With this particular circle, you're actually getting little bits of all different aspects of being a druid. Really, like in the game, there's aspects that make you tankier. There's aspects that just add more damage. You get all those resistances. You're also, putting minions on the board, so you're like a summoner as well. You're not like awesome at any one particular of those things, but they kind of add up to make a nice little bundle. So the one thing I would say though is if you want to play a creepy kind of druid, Circle of Spores is probably the way to go. So next up, we're going to talk about wild shaping.
So basically now we're diving back into the core class and continuing with, second level and beyond.
Correct. So wild shaping, second level, you get this ability, and it increases at 4th and 8th level. And the way it works is you have a maximum challenge rating that you can wild shape into, and then at 4th level and 2nd level, you have restrictions. At 2nd level, you can't do anything that can swim or fly. At 4th level, you can't do anything that can fly. And then at 8th level, pretty much any beast as long as you meet the CR minimum. And it goes quarter, half, and 1, I believe. So now as a druid, we don't get any more abilities until 18th level. But
over the course of that, you will get increased spellcasting,
and your wild shape gets better.
And your wild shape gets better. It is a full spellcasting class, so you will get all of that. It's not like you get nothing from 2 to 18th. That's kind of weird.
Well, you would get your subclass abilities as well. But yeah, you already have a pretty powerful kit as a druid. 18th level, you get 2 different things, one of which is Timeless Body. What that is, for every 10 years, you only age 1.
Yeah, that allows them to really exist throughout the ages. In years past, druids used to have this ability where they stopped aging, so they kind of slowed that down. So I'm now looking at it like, okay, what happens if you make an elven druid? How long is that sucker?
You can live thousands of years. As it should be.
So at 18th level, they're also going to get a thing called Beast Spells. And this is where while in wild shape form, they can cast any spell that doesn't have a material component. So they can still cast it while they're a polar bear or, what have you.
Now, at 20th level, they get their capstone ability. They may get the best capstone ability in the game. First of all, wild shape, unlimited. So they don't have any limitation on that, which means they can get temporary hit points basically over and over again. But that's not all. Now, no matter what form they're in, they can cast spells as long as they don't require costly material components or components that are consumed. So pretty much, most of the druid list is just going to be them thinking spells at people at 20th level. I mean, that feels almost more epic than a high-level wizard at that point. I just envision this, druid in his brown plain robes, bare feet, maybe sandals, scruffy looking, just kind of strolling through the forest with his hands behind his back, whistling, and things are just happening. Firestorms are happening, giant trees are growing, trees are getting up and walking away, wolves are appearing out of nowhere.
I think maybe the tree gets up and, walks along with him and has a conversation.
That could very well be the case. So, like I said, druids have the best, probably, capstone ability in the game.
Is pretty potent, man, I have to say. So if you love druids, then you might love this video of druids. What can you do while you're wild shape?
Enter deeper into the Nerdarchy circle and join us for our weekly patron-only live chats.
We also create 5e products for 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons for our patrons. All of our patrons automatically get entered into our monthly giveaway and more.
So until next time,
stay nerdy.